I've undone the hole that I made in the previous scene. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at some of the options that we can do, and then I'll redo the cuttings. If we click on here again, now what we can do here, when we click on an object like this, we have these options in here, and one of the interesting ones to look at is also radius. So if I wanted to make this more rounded, I can round my shape. Obviously it will go tend towards a sphere, but if you wanted a more rounded shape like this to accentuate the cut that you're going to make through here, so we'll just keep moving this through like this. Now again, turn the red object into a hole, and then we can combine this like this, and we're going to click combine, and now we've got a square cut through a rounded object. So there's lots of little features and things that you can do. So let's have a look at how we can start combining things together to make some more complex objects. So let's, for example, say we wanted to have several of these. So we can obviously use Command D to duplicate, and there's our second object. So on a Mac it's Command D, obviously we can Control D for duplicate, but over here you have the duplicate function up over here. Sorry, up over here, top round, copy and paste. But you can just do it with Command C, Command V. But I just did Control D or Command D. It's already copied it, and I'm just using the arrow key to move it. So let's time now we've looked at some of the functions available to us in Tinkercad, is to start using that knowledge to start creating some more complex objects. So we know that we can use holes to help sculpt. We can combine objects together to help make a more complex object. And so we need to start thinking about what that looks like in terms of making things that are more complicated and more detailed. So I'm just going to drag out a box, and I'm going to drag out a cylinder. In fact, let's just delete the box and see what we can do with the cylinder. So let's, for example, say we were trying to make something that was, let's click this, let's make it, no, 20 is fine. We'll just make this, let's make it 4 millimeters high. That's fine. What we're going to do now is we're going to duplicate this, and I want to make this, that's 20, so let's make this 18. So I want to make a 2 millimeter rim. Now this object here is 4 millimeters high, so I want to make this one, well, let's make it 3. And I want to make it, I want to lift it off the ground, so I want it to be 1 millimeter off the ground. Yep, that'll do. I'm going to move it over here, and I want to center it in this object. So I'm going to make sure it's centered. Yep, it's all centered. Just make sure it's still 1 millimeter off the ground. Yep, let's just zoom in. Maybe I'll lift it a little bit more. Okay, that'll do us. So now I just think I want to duplicate it and move it sideways. I'll use this a bit later, you'll see why. And so now what I want to do is I want to make this into a hole, and I'm going to combine these two, and I'm going to punch them. And what I've done now is I've made a recession, a dip. So this one now I want to make this into, let's click on here, that says 18. Let's make this, let's take this down to 3. Not 30, 3. And this one, 3. to move it here, and I want to put it in the center of this. So come back to here, align, center, center, and now I've got this exactly in the center, but it's too low, so I now want to lift it up. So I've got like a boss or a hub, and now I'm starting to make a disc, a much more complicated disc. So we could now start thinking about doing things like, let's start calling this a wheel. So I now want to drag in something like a roof here, and I want to make it, let's make this 5, and I want to make it doesn't need to be very long, and I need to rotate it. So I want to click on here, rotate it to 90 degrees, and I want to make it much shorter. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as a shape to punch holes. So I'm just going to get this all organised so I'll get everything the right way. Yeah. So now I want this aligned in the centre. So I'm going to click on this and click on that, and I'm going to group them so they're grouped together. And now I'm going to click on this, and I want this aligned in the centre. There we go. And I'm going to drag this back, so let's zoom in. I'm going to drag this back all the way so it's just touching the edge, and I'm going to use the grid tool here to make sure I come back in millimeter increment. There we go. Now I want to make sure this goes all the way through, so I'm going to click on this and drag it down so it's a minus number. There we go, it's going through, and I'm just going to copy this, just get it over to the side here. There we go, and now I can turn this into a hole, and I can combine these, and if I combine, I'm now starting to create or cut holes in my shape. So it starts to look like perhaps a wheel or a gear or whatever you want to make it. And so you can see, just using 2 shapes, we can start making some really complex objects. The last tool I want to show you is the duplicate and rotate tool. So we're going to drag this box out into the square, into here, and we're just going to make it 60 long, and we're going to make it 10 wide and 10 high, and we're going to duplicate it. There it is. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make it slightly longer, this duplicated one, and we're going to turn it 45 degrees. We're going to pick it up and we're going to move it so it's over this one here approximately, and we're just going to make sure it's centered to this one. So it's the center tool, we're just going to center it all up. There we go. And again, using our orbit tool, this is all very approximate, it doesn't really matter. We're going to click on this and we're going to make sure just want to make sure again that everything is still centered. Yep, it still is centered. I just want to make sure that we've cut through the edges. Yes. Alright, so what I'm going to be doing is using this top block to cut out a notch in the bottom block. So again, I've got to make this, a transparent hole. There we go. I'm going to group these and I'm going to combine them. There we go. So now I've got this V. And now I'm going to show you how we can use this tool over here, the duplicate tool. Now that I've made my shape, I'm going to use the duplicate and rotate function. So I'm going to click on the object I want to duplicate and rotate. I'm going to click on the duplicate and rotate button, and then I'm going to turn it 20 degrees. There we do. There we go. And I've got it in position. That's how I want it to be. And obviously we can fine tune this. But now if I keep clicking on up over here, duplicate and repeat, click it once. Can you see how it's duplicating and repeating the whole object all the way around to make this, one more time, this star shape. So now we can make this really complex object. So I've used the duplicate and rotate option. I'm going to turn this into a single object. So let's just click on group. And if we now zoom into this, you can see we've got some really quite complex geometry in this shape. And what we can do, we've got a cone going on in here, but I'm going to punch a hole through there now with a cylinder. So I'm just going to grab this. I'm going to just center it up so I know what I'm doing. Click on here, and I'm going to make this, let's make this 10. There's my object, and I'm going to click on this and click on that, and I want to center it. So let's click on here, center and center. There it is. And I want to punch a hole through, so I'm going to turn this into a hole. I'm going to slide it down, make sure it's gone through. Yes, it has. And I'm going to select all, and then I'm going to combine. There we go, and my object has now got a hole in it, and I've made this really complex shape by using this duplicate and rotate function.